Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. All of the elite memberships will now roll at the beginning of every video. That way we can go ahead and dive into today's story. It is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and get ready for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Crime Volume 15. Trigger warning. Some of these cases may not be suitable for all. Listening discretion is highly advised. Secrets in the Bathroom. The disturbing case of Cassidy Goodson. Cassidy Goodson had been keeping a secret. At 14 years old, she took unimaginable steps to conceal her pregnancy. Pregnancy is often heralded as a time of joy and anticipation, a milestone celebrated by families and communities alike. Yet, for some, the experience can be fraught with fear, secrecy, and desperation. These complexities of teenage pregnancy were tragically underscored in Lakeland, Florida in 2012, when a 14-year-old girl took unimaginable steps to conceal her pregnancy. Cassidy Goodson lived in Greenbrier Village with her family. She wasn't just a typical teenager. She was an accomplished softball player, active on several youth teams, and known for her dedication and skill. Her mother, Teresa, described her as a great child who not only excelled in sports, but also took on household responsibilities like preparing family dinners and attending church every Sunday. But beneath the surface, Cassidy carried a heavy secret. Unknown to everybody, she had been pregnant for months, concealing the pregnancy with baggy clothing and denying any suspicions. Even when her mother's two sisters voiced their concerns, suggesting Cassidy might be pregnant, Teresa was reluctant to believe them. She questioned her daughter directly on 2 occasions, but Cassidy dismissed the concerns and even provided negative results from home pregnancy tests. Tests she had been allowed to take privately. Despite her petite frame, standing at just 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 100 pounds, Cassidy successfully hid her growing belly, all the while bearing the immense weight of her situation alone. The shocking truth came to light on September 22nd of 2012. Teresa was tidying her daughter's room and gathering laundry when she was overwhelmed by an overpowering stench. Following the source of the smell, she discovered a shoebox tucked away, its contents hidden, but the odor undeniable. Opening the box, she recoiled in horror. Inside lay the body of a full-term baby boy, along with blood-stained towels and clothing. Cassidy was taken into custody and questioned by detectives. In chilling details, she recounted the events of 5 days prior. On September 17th, she began feeling unwell, with the discomfort intensifying over the next 2 days. On the morning of September 19th, she went into labor from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., while her mother was at home. Cassidy labored alone in the bathroom. To muffle any sounds, she bit down on a towel and turned on the water. The pain was excruciating, and at one point, she used a pair of scissors in a desperate attempt to deliver the baby. Ultimately, Cassidy gave birth to a healthy baby boy, weighing 9.5 pounds and weighing 20.4 inches long. But his life was heartbreakingly short. Cassidy attempted to wrapping her hands around his neck and squeezing until he stopped moving or breathing. Afterward, she showered with the baby's lifeless body, cleansing them both. before placing him in the shoebox along with the bloodstained items. When asked why she had taken such extreme measures, Cassidy's response was steeped in fear and a profound desire to maintain the status quo. "I didn't want to change the relationship with my mom and my family," she told detectives. "I wanted it to stop breathing so I wouldn't get in trouble." The baby's father, another teenager, had been unaware of her pregnancy, and they had since broken up. When Cassidy was asked what she planned on doing with the body, she responded, "I didn't have a plan. I was going to end up having to tell my mom, but I was waiting so I would try and find an idea of what to do with it." In the following days following the murder, Teresa began to piece together the truth about her daughter's pregnancy. She noticed bloodstains around the toilet and questioned Cassidy about what had happened. Cassidy responded with a fabricated story, claiming she had suffered a miscarriage and flushed the fetus down the toilet without looking. Believing her daughter's explanation, Teresa took her to Lakeland Regional Medical Center to receive medical treatment for the supposed miscarriage. While at the hospital, the situation took a turn. Hospital staff, concerned by the circumstances, contacted the Polk County Sheriff's Office and the Department of Children and Families. Investigators quickly became involved, and the case was forwarded to the PCSO Bureau of Criminal Investigations for further follow-up. But before that follow-up occurred, Teresa discovered the truth. An autopsy conducted on the infant, referred to as baby Goodson, revealed the cause of death to be asphyxia and blunt force trauma. These findings led to Cassidy being charged with first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. Sheriff Grady Judd addressed the public during a press conference, offering chilling details of the case. He described how the baby was still attached to Cassidy by the umbilical cord when she choked him to death. "I just can't get over that," he said, his voice somber as he contemplated the gravity of the situation. Judd acknowledged Cassidy's youth, asking a poignant question. "Let's remember she is a child. Where was her support system?" As the legal process began, Teresa came to her daughter's defense, maintaining that neither she nor Cassidy had known about the pregnancy. Teresa pointed to Cassidy's consistent periods and lack of significant weight gain as evidence. Cassidy's grandmother, Donna, echoed these claims, recounting that Cassidy had told her, "If I knew I was pregnant, it would have been different." However, Cassidy's own admission that she had deliberately worn baggy clothes to conceal her pregnancy cast doubt on the family's assertions. On October 4, 2012, prosecutors announced their decision to try Cassidy as an adult, citing the severity of the charges. Under Florida law, the adult criminal justice system allowed for harsher penalties, including a mandatory life sentence for first-degree murder. Because Cassidy was only 14 years old, she could not face the death penalty, but the possibility of a long sentence loomed over her. However, earlier that year, the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled that mandatory life sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional, leaving Cassidy's ultimate fate uncertain. State Attorney Jerry Hill acknowledged the complexity of the case, stating, "Legally speaking, it's possible that it's a life case. Practically speaking, and what is the just thing to do? That will be determined as we learn more about it." In December, the legal battle reached an unexpected resolution when Cassidy entered a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter, avoiding a trial for the murder of baby Goodson. Judge Donald Jacobson, who presided over the case, sentenced Cassidy to at least 18 months in a State Department of Juvenile Justice maximum risk facility. where she would be required to complete a treatment program. As she left the courtroom, Cassidy wiped away her tears on the sleeve of her jail-issued uniform. Judge Jacobson, after reviewing psychological and psychiatric reports, opted for juvenile sanctions rather than an adult sentence. He explained his reasoning, saying, "It is a horrible, horrible offense, but the circumstances of how it occurred caused me not to believe it was premeditated." Let down by police. The tragic case of Tara Brown. Domestic violence orders are a key facet in the legal protective measures that are available to all victims of familial and intimate partner violence in Queensland, Australia. However, in 2015, a case of domestic violence rocked the entire nation to its very core and showed the enforcement of such orders are severely lacking. It was around 2007 when Tara Brown met Lionel Petit while attending Kebra Park High School, which is renowned for its rugby league footballer. Lionel was a promising NRL player and played for the South Coast Maori rugby league team. The couple were said to be inseparable. As one friend said, "They're just a package deal. It was always Tara and Lionel. They were best friends." Following their graduation in 2009, the couple continued to date before moving into a home at Upper Coomera Street. In 2012, the couple had a little girl, Aria, who was the apple of her mother's eye. Tara's Facebook was peppered with photographs of her daughter. "My world, my sun, my moon, my star," she wrote, alongside numerous photographs of Aria. Photographs of her laughing, crying, her bottom lip sticking out as a sign of protest. Tara wrote, "When you were born, the angels sighed in delight. They never thought they'd seen such a beautiful sight. You took a breath and the world was right again." Tara worked at Southport Central Towers, and according to one of her colleagues, she was a golden girl. In fact, during one conversation among the colleagues about what they would do if they had the luxury of not working, Tara responded by saying she loved coming to work. On her desk, she had photographs of Aria. According to one colleague, Nikki Hodkinson, Tara was a beautiful person, very caring, very kind, and she was very genuine. We had a lot of laughs. She had a great personality. She would do anything for anyone. Life seemed to be good. Over the years, however, Lionel had gotten himself involved in a rough crowd and became part of the Bandititos outlaw motorcycle gang. His role was running drugs and collecting, and by 19 years old, Lionel had become heavily involved with the gang. He quickly rose through the ranks because he had a propensity for violence, eventually becoming the sergeant at arms. In 2013, he was involved in the Broad Beach bikie crawl. As time progressed, a cycle of domestic abuse unraveled. Lionel became increasingly more violent with Tara, and the prolonged abuse led her to continually doubt herself. As her mother, Natalie Hinton, said, her self-confidence declined. The monster was now in control. On numerous occasions, Tara had tried to separate from Lionel, and each time he refused to accept it. He made her life a living hell with abuse and threats, and Tara had taken out several protection orders, but each time he would breach the orders. In August of 2015, Tara finally left Lionel for good. However, towards the end of the month, Lionel forced Tara into their bedroom, pinned her to the bed, and held a pair of scissors to her throat and threatened her. After the terrifying ordeal, Tara decided the safest option was to hide from Lionel, as she attempted to get a domestic violence order against Lionel. She told her mother that she was going to a refuge. However, when she arrived at the refuge, she found it wasn't a safe place for Aria. People were using drugs, and the bed linen was filthy. Concerned about her daughter, she returned to the coast. Over the course of the next few days, lawyers negotiated a custody agreement between Tara and Lionel, while Tara continued to avoid Lionel for the safety of herself and the safety of her daughter. At around 8:45 a.m. on the 9th of September 2015, Tara had been driving along Macquarie Avenue in Melindador when Lionel Petit rammed her car with his Jeep. Tara's rolled down an embankment and into a front yard. The crash had taken place just as residents on the leafy suburban street were preparing to leave for work or preparing to take their children to school. A bystander named Lisa Kennedy heard what she'd described as a huge bang. She ran to the source of the noise and came across the car crash. She saw that Tara was trapped underneath the car and rushed to her aid. She saw Lionel crouch down behind the wreckage and helped him smash the window to get into the car. However, a grim reality quickly set in. Lionel grabbed a piece of steel from a fire hydrant that had been destroyed in the crash and began to smash Tara over the head with a heavy object. It soon became evident that Lionel hadn't been trying to save Tara, but instead kill her. Lisa tried to pull Lionel off Tara, but he was far too strong. He had his knee on Tara's chest while the rest of her body was trapped and was just smacking her head over and over again. As the horrific scene continued to unfold, a man who identified himself only as Mike was driving past. He pulled over to the side of the road to try and offer assistance. Firefighters soon arrived, and by this point, Lionel had fled the scene, stealing a white Council Ute who had arrived on scene. Mike said she was not in a good way. Her face was caved in and covered in blood. They were pumping air into her and put some tarps up. The firefighters had to cut the roof off the car to free Tara from the wreckage. She had sustained severe head injuries, not from the crash, but instead from the attack that Lionel had launched onto her with a piece of steel. She was completely unrecognizable. Tara was taken by ambulance to the Gold Coast University Hospital's resuscitation unit, where a specialized trauma unit was waiting for her. Following the crash and subsequent attack, Lionel was hunted by police. However, he later drove to Coomera Police Station and handed himself in. When he handed himself in, it was noticed that he had self-inflicted knife wounds and was transported to Gold Coast University Hospital, where he was said to be in stable condition. Lionel was charged with attempted murder. Meanwhile, it was announced that Tara was in critical condition. Then, the following day, it was further announced that it seemed unlikely that she was going to survive the attack. An investigation uncovered that the intentional crash was the culmination of a car chase between Tara and Lionel. According to a number of witnesses, they had seen Lionel in his Jeep chasing Tara in her Mazda at around 100 kilometers per hour. The day before, Lionel's lawyer received interim custody orders from Tara. These orders gave Lionel visiting rights under the condition that he must be on good behavior. Upon receiving the orders, Lionel called Aria's child care center to inquire as to whether she was going to be there the following morning. When the employee confirmed that Aria was booked in for the following morning, Lionel seemingly put his plan into action. On the morning of the attack, Lionel followed Tara after she dropped Aria off at childcare. At an intersection, witnesses had spotted Lionel steer his car in front of Tara's car. He got out of the car and began striking Tara's car with his fists and a knife before running her off the road. As it would turn out, around a week before the attack, Tara had walked into Southport Police Station and asked for them to help her leave Lionel and requested a domestic violence protection order. She had come with a friend and had shown the officers a number of text messages that Lionel had sent her. Instead of giving Tara help or even offering advice as to where she should seek help, the police simply told her to seek help elsewhere. Following the disturbing revelation, it was announced that Southport Police Station would be under investigation. An official statement read, "The appropriateness of the police response had been reported to the Queensland Police Service Ethical Standards Command and is currently being investigated by a senior officer." Later that night, Tara passed away from her injuries in the hospital. Following the crushing update, investigators appealed for any witnesses who may have seen a black Jeep and a black Mazda in the area between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. In memory of Tara, a number of people across the city changed their profile pictures on social media to a photograph of Tara with her daughter and sister. Messages of support flooded in for the family. Lionel's family pleaded on social media for supporters to pray for both families, stating, "Please pray for both families as everyone is feeling this pain right now." A makeshift memorial appeared where Tara was run off the road. On the 16th of September, Lionel appeared in Southport Magistrates Court via video link to have his charge formally upgraded to murder. During the court hearing, it was revealed that Lionel had stabbed himself 5 times after attacking Tara. One of the wounds had punctured his lung. It was also revealed that while trying to escape Lionel, Tara had called police for help. On the phone call, the operator could hear Tara screaming for help. She repeatedly screamed that Lionel was going to stab her. Moments later, sounds of the car crash could be heard before Tara could be heard moaning, "Help me." One of the last things Tara said was, "Lionel, stop. Please help me." The operator had heard 16 thumping sounds. A female can be heard shouting in the background, "What the fuck are you doing?" Lionel responds with, "She got my kid," and then a further 13 thumping sounds can be heard. In the wake of Tara's murder, many questioned how police failed so desperately to protect Tara. University of Queensland's law professor Heather Douglas said, "Police really need to take them seriously. It is the case that there really needs to be a cultural shift." She said that it wasn't the orders that were the problem, but instead the way that police officers responded to domestic violence. According to Deputy Commissioner Brett Pointing, while there had been a leap in police attitude to domestic violence, a lot of work still needed to be done. The following day, Tara was laid to rest. Around 1,000 people packed into the Southport Church of Christ to pay their final respects. All of those in attendance wore white ribbons to show their support to the campaign against domestic violence. Before the funeral, Tara's coffin had remained at her family's home as part of Maori tradition. Music echoed throughout the church as Tara's life was detailed by those who loved her the most. During the service, it was heard that Tara had grown up as a tomboy. She loved nothing more than playing outside. Tara's stepfather, Johnny, was holding Aria in his arms as he stated, "You can't think of Tara without a smile coming to your face." While one of her friends, Mary Jeffries, fondly recalled, Tara had 2 main things she loved in life. One was Aria, and the other was taking selfies. Tara's uncle spoke about domestic violence, stating, We pray that domestic violence will end." Her aunt echoed the sentiment, stating, "There are women out there. You know who you are. Please don't live in silence." They said that the family's hearts were absolutely shattered by what had happened in addressing Tara. They said that she was loved and cherished. At the end of the service, Tara's mother, Natalie, broke down in tears as she held Aria and watched the coffin being loaded into the waiting hearse. Tara was subsequently buried at Southport Lawn Cemetery. In early October, over 2,000 people attended a fundraising event that was held in the memory of Tara. They gathered at Kumara Sports Park and released 500 white balloons and one pink one. Gold Coast Deputy Mayor Donna Gates told the crowd that domestic violence was un-Australian and unacceptable at any level, at any time, at any place, and anywhere. The following month, it was announced that Lionel had been also arrested in connection to the murder of 37-year-old Greg Duffy. Greg had vanished on the 6th of July and had never been found, but police determined that he had most likely been murdered. At the time of his disappearance, Greg was deeply in debt over drugs, and police now speculated that Lionel was somehow involved. Lionel's defense lawyer, Campbell McCallum, said that Lionel had been questioned in relation to Greg's disappearance and said that he had denied any involvement. He additionally said that he believed that police had been relying on a statement from a person who had not been charged. He said, "I understand there is no other evidence linking Lionel to the offense." Just days later, a second man was arrested and charged with the murder of Greg. The second man was identified as Aaron Crawford, Lionel's cousin. Police released further information regarding Greg's disappearance and subsequent murder. They stated that CCTV footage had shown Greg arriving at the car park of Ashmore Steak and Seafood Restaurant on the 6th of July. They said that he was later driving to Mount Nathan, around 14 kilometers away, in a Mack truck and was not seen since. They alleged that Aaron and Lionel were contracted to fix up an outstanding drug money debt. Before the month came to an end, a third man was arrested in connection with Greg's murder. Liam Bliss appeared in court to be formally charged with Greg's murder. Police additionally said that up to 5 more people may have been involved in the murder and said that further arrests were likely. In early December, police announced that more than one weapon had been used in the murder of Greg and said that they were searching 3 Oxenford sites where they believed the multiple murder weapons were hidden. They further announced that Greg had been led to a lonely part of Gold Coast hinterland and beaten to death as retribution for stealing drugs from Aaron. Details of the alleged eyewitnesses' account of the murder emerged. It was alleged that Aaron had yelled, "Bite the hand that feeds you," during the attack, and later tried to revive Greg, but to no avail. The eyewitness account had come from Liam Bliss, who was the third man to have been arrested. Liam had told investigators that Lionel had paid him $200 to assist in the attack. In February, a further man named Clinton Stockman was arrested in relation to Greg's murder. He was charged with being an accessory after the fact, and it was alleged he had helped dispose of Greg's body. However, he was bailed shortly thereafter. The investigation into Greg's murder continued while the prosecution and defense were making preparations for Lionel to stand trial for Tara's murder. Before the end of February, it was announced that investigators believed that the 4 men had burned Greg's body over the course of several days. They soon discovered a shifting spanner and a knife that had been hidden in bushland at Cops Road, which they believed had been the murder weapons. In May, it was announced that Lionel's 22-year-old brother, Nelson Petit, had been arrested and charged with Greg's murder. As the one-year anniversary to Tara's death approached, her mother, Natalie, spoke with the media for the first time and said that Aria remained her shining light and kept her focused. She said, "She's very much like her mom. She's very confident." She described how Aria will grow up to be a go-getter like her mom was. She additionally announced that she and her partner, Johnny Gardner, had established the Tara Brown Foundation. The purpose of the foundation was to provide help to victims of domestic violence who were seeking accommodation in refuges. It was a 100% not-for-profit charity, with all of the proceedings going directly to those who needed it. By this point in the investigation, Lionel had been in solitary confinement in jail for over 7 months after attacking the guards and pouring boiling water over a pedophile. This was just part of the increasing violence in Queensland jails. A number of newspapers wrote articles about the concerns of so-called fight clubs in the jails. Attacks on guards had skyrocketed apparently because of overcrowding and bikies being allowed to mix with the mainstream jail population. In fact, the first 6 months of the year, assaults on guards had increased 160% at Wollston, 150% at Southern Queensland, and 63% at Woodford. In February of 2017, Lionel pleaded guilty to the murder of Tara. In Queensland, a murder sentence carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison. They must serve 20 years before being eligible for parole. In handing down the sentence, Supreme Court Judge Deborah Mullins said that Lionel now has to live with the guilt of leaving his daughter with no mother. She said, "Your daughter has been deprived of the love and nurture of her mother. You have to live every day of your life knowing you deprived Miss Brown of her life and your daughter of a mother." The court heard how Lionel claimed he did not remember murdering Tara. His lawyer said that in the days leading up to the attack, Lionel had been under the influence of drugs. He allegedly remembered some part of chasing Tara, but said he did not remember the crucial parts. During the hearing, it was revealed that the justice system had truly failed to protect Tara. In April of 2012, police had issued protection orders against Lionel. He breached several times, including one phone call where he threatened to kill Tara. Despite being on a suspended sentence, Lionel was given 1 month imprisonment, but was released on immediate parole under the condition he would not go within 100 meters of Tara. Tara's mother was given the opportunity to give an impact statement. Before she took the stand, Judge Deborah Mullins ordered him to listen carefully. Natalie said, "I am the mother of Tara Brown, deceased. I speak with extreme fondness of my daughter. She was a lover, loving, and loved. She was a lover of life. From a very young age, Tara would explore and seek fun, push herself to the limits, give anything a go. The world was her oyster." She went on to describe how she was haunted by her daughter's laughter, her joyful banter, her dimples, and even her smile. Lionel had penned a letter to Tara's family in which he said, "The question that haunts us all is how such a tragedy like this could have ever happened. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers and can't clarify it for myself either. I hope today in court gives everyone personally involved some sort of closure. Those of you who were close to us know how my sun rose and set for her. She was my everything. Still is. Tara was a dream catch. That one in a million girl. Outside of court, Tara's family described Lionel as a narcissist who subjected Tara to years of torment, including breaches of precious domestic violence orders. Shortly after the verdict, 2 police officers were disciplined after an internal investigation into why they turned Tara away when she reached out for help less than a week before she was murdered. A statement was released which read, "As a result of the investigation, 2 members have been subject of disciplinary action." However, they elaborated no further. The same day, Tara's mother, Natalie, asked Queensland MPs to back the opposition proposed tough new law to track and jail violent domestic offenders. The private member's bill called for GPD trackers to be mandatory for dangerous offenders, as well as a DV alert system activated which would warn victims and immediate appeal rights for victims to the bail process. Speaking to the Legal Affairs Parliamentary Committee, she said, "Women and children can no longer be let down by a system that is there to protect them. The appalling cost of human lives to domestic and family violence is a national tragedy of crisis proportions. I hope members on all sides of the House will see past the politics and do what is right for our nation." Dubbed Tara's Law, a disclosure scheme was implemented. The scheme would allow people in intimate relationships to request information on domestic violence convictions on their partners. In May of 2018, Lionel confessed to his role in the murder of Greg Duffy and was handed a second life sentence. Lionel's brother, Nelson Petit, and Aaron Crawford also pleaded guilty to manslaughter. When a woman gets the courage to leave a domestically violent relationship, statistically, that is when they are in the most danger. Tara Brown sought out help and sought it out numerous times. She was repeatedly let down by the justice system, who didn't take her fears seriously. The murder of Tara Brown led to many questioning. How many women must die before family violence is taken seriously and permanent changes are made to the legal system? Trigger warning, dear listeners. This next case may disturb many. Serious listening discretion is highly advised. The Monster in Bargo, the tragic case of Ebony Simpson. In 1992, 9-year-old Ebony Simpson vanished while walking home in Bargo, Australia. The investigation would lead to a very disturbing confession. Bargo, a sleepy hamlet nestled in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, is the kind of place where life drifts by at its own pace. Known for its bushranging past and its proximity to the pristine Picton Lakes, it's a town where the extraordinary rarely intrudes. But in 1992, an unimaginable tragedy shattered Bargo's serenity, forever etching the name Ebony Smith into its history and breaking the collective heart of the community. Ebony Simpson was only 9 years old, a bright, happy girl living in Bargo with her parents, Peter and Christine, and her 2 other brothers, 15-year-old Zach and 14-year-old Taz. She was a Year 4 student at Bargo Primary School, where her teachers and classmates all adored her. Described as timid yet cheerful, Ebony had a warm and easygoing nature. To those closest to her, she was lovingly called Bonnie. Ebony dreamed of becoming a police officer, a goal her family and friends were sure she could achieve. Whether playing netball, spending time with her friends, or simply being her creative self, Ebony seemed to excel at everything she tried. On August 19, 1992, the ordinary rhythm of Bargo's quiet life was broken forever. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and Ebony was on her way home from school. Normally, her parents or brothers would pick her up or meet her at the bus stop, which was just 400 meters from her house. But on this day, Peter and Christine were visiting relatives in Wollongong, and Zach had planned to meet Ebony at the bus stop after his own day of school. Unfortunately, Zach's bus ran late, leaving Ebony to make the short walk home alone. At around 4 p.m., Ebony stepped off the bus at the corner of Bargo and Arena Roads. It was a familiar and safe path, one she had walked many times before. Wearing her blue tracksuit and a pink parka, she was easily recognizable, even from a distance. Her pink school bag dangled from her small shoulders as she began the walk toward her home. A neighbor, Nellie Abella, saw her walking in the direction of her house, and for a fleeting moment, everything seemed perfectly normal. But that was the last time anyone saw Ebony alive. When Zach arrived home a short while later, he expected to find his little sister there waiting for him. Instead, the house was eerily quiet. Ebony was not home. Perplexed, he called their mother Christine to see if she had picked Ebony up after school. When she told him she hadn't, Zach's concern deepened. He immediately started calling Ebony's friends, hoping she had gone to a classmate's house or stopped somewhere along the way. But every call ended in disappointment. None of her friends had seen her after school. By the time Christine returned home, panic had set in. She and Zach scoured the streets of Bargo, calling Ebony's name and stopping at every house in the neighborhood. When their search turned up nothing, Christine made the call every parent dreads. She phoned the police to report her daughter missing. Detective Sergeant Rod Grant was one of the first officers on the scene, and he wasted no time organizing a search. Police from Camden and Picton were dispatched, along with the dog squad and local SES volunteers. A police helicopter hovered overhead, its searchlights cutting through the darkening skies as the hours passed. Missing person flyers were quickly printed and distributed across the area. They described Ebony as standing 130 centimeters tall, with waist-length fair hair, dressed in her blue tracksuit and pink parka, and carrying a pink school bag. Police and volunteers went door to door, questioning neighbors and urging them to report anything unusual, no matter how minor it might seem. Bottom of form. As the search of Ebony Simpson continued, a neighbor came forward with a lead that would ultimately expose the grim truth. The neighbor recalled seeing a man, approximately 18 or 19 years old, working under the bonnet of a dirty white or cream-colored car on Arena Road, the same road Ebony had walked down just before vanishing. The car, possibly an early model Mazda or Datsun, was described as being in poor condition, with visible stains of a smoky exhaust pipe. The man had been standing just ahead of Ebony, positioned at the corner where she would have turned onto Arena Road. He was described as wearing a black long-sleeve top and black jeans, standing at around 177 centimeters tall, with straight shoulder-length brown hair and a thin build. This detail wasn't an isolated observation. Police revealed that a car matching that description had been spotted multiple times in the area in the days leading up to Ebony's disappearance. Witnesses also reported seeing a similar car loitering near primary and high schools in surrounding suburbs over the past few months. Although police couldn't confirm whether it was the same car, they couldn't rule it out either. When Ebony's mother, Christine, heard the description of the man, she recalled seeing someone similar in the days before Ebony's disappearance. With her help, detectives created a composite sketch. The image was quickly circulated, and soon after, multiple calls came in identifying the man as 29-year-old Andrew Peter Garforth. Garforth was an unemployed father of two with a history of petty crime that included breaking and entering, theft, and traffic violations. While his criminal record spanned years, it held no indication that he was capable of the unspeakable acts he would soon admit to. Garforth had been living in Bargo for just around 5 weeks, having skipped bail in Western Australia. His family had recently moved to the area, settling just 3 kilometers from the Simpson home. When police located Garforth, they brought him in for questioning. What they didn't anticipate was the chilling confession that followed. Garforth calmly admitted to abducting, raping, and murdering Ebony Simpson, the horrifying details with disturbing detachment. On that fateful day, Garforth had positioned himself near his car, pretending to tinker under the bonnet. When Ebony walked past, he grabbed her from behind and forced her into the car's trunk before speeding off. He turned the music up loud to drown out any sound Ebony made from the trunk. He then drove to a remote dirt track along Charles Point Road, where he moved her from the trunk to the front seat. Ebony, terrified and pleading for her life, begged him to let her go home, but Garforth had no intention of showing mercy. At the edge of a dam nearby, Garforth bound Ebony's hands and feet with wire before subjecting her to a brutal rape. He recollected. She asked me if I was going to let her go, and I said I don't know. But Garforth did know. After he was finished with the brutal sexual assault, he threw Ebony into the water of the dam while she was still bound. Despite being a strong swimmer, Ebony was unable to keep herself afloat with her hands and feet restrained. Garforth stuffed her school bag with rocks and tossed it into the dam as well, hoping to seek any evidence that might implicate him. As Ebony struggled and screamed for help, he walked away, fully aware she would drown. Shockingly, Garforth later returned to the area where he had abducted Ebony and joined the search efforts organized by the local community. He walked among concerned neighbors and police officers, feigning worry for the little girl he knew would never return home. Following the confession, Ebony's body was retrieved from the dam. The murder of Ebony Simpson didn't just shatter the small town of Bargo. It sent shockwaves of grief and outrage across the nation. Among those most devastated was Andrew Garforth's wife, Denise, the mother of his 2 young sons, age 1 and 3. Denise was blindsided. At the time of Garforth's arrest, the couple had been planning to expand their family with a 3rd child. In an emotional interview with A Current Affair, Denise expressed her disbelief. Despite feeling deeply hurt and destroyed by what had happened, she confessed that she still loved Andrew. She described him as an amazing father to their children, struggling to reconcile the man she knew with the monster who had taken Ebony's life. While Denise and the Simpson family reeled in emotional agony, Andrew Garforth faced the brutal reality of prison life. Shortly after being placed in Long Bay Jail, he became the target of inmate fury. In one incident, he was attacked while sitting alone in a locked holding yard. Days later, a group of inmates broke into his locked cell to attack him again. Following 3 attacks, Garforth was transferred to Goulburn Jail, where he was placed under protection. Garforth's murder trial began in January, but there would be no drawn-out legal battle. In court, he pleaded guilty to the murder of Ebony Simpson, offering no defense, no explanation, and no remorse. Mr. Justice Newman, who presided over the case, made the decision to exclude victim impact statements from Ebony's family, acknowledging that the effects of such a crime were too obvious to need articulation. Plainly enough, the effects of these events upon the victim's family would be horrific, he remarked. He also described Ebony's final moments as unimaginably terrifying, emphasizing the cruelty and coldness of Garforth's actions. During sentencing, Justice Newman noted Garforth's disturbing lack of emotion, both during his crime and in his confession to investigators. He recalled Garforth's callous and casual comment about what he had expected to happen to Ebony as she struggled in the water, a detail he found chilling to the extreme. The courtroom was packed on the day Garforth was sentenced, and when Justice Newman handed down a life term without the possibility of parole, the room erupted in cheers and applause. Garforth became only the 5th person in New South Wales history to receive such a sentence, a reflection of the severity and inhumanity of his crime. The sentence brought a measure of justice to Ebony's family, but it could never erase the profound loss they felt. Andrew Garforth's life sentence ensured that he would never walk free, but the scars of his action would linger indefinitely on the Simpson family, the town of Bargo, and in Australia that would never forget Ebony Simpson. The haunting case of St. Louis Jane Doe. On the 28th of February, 1983, the headless body of a little girl was discovered in the basement of an abandoned building in St. Louis, Missouri. On the afternoon of February 28, 1983, 2 men were searching for a pipe to fix their broken van in St. Louis, Missouri, when entered a crumbling, abandoned red brick apartment building located at 5635 Clemens Avenue. As they ventured into the damp basement, an overpowering stench assaulted their senses. Their eyes were drawn to the source of the smell, a bundle in the middle of the basement. They recoiled in horror to see that the bundle was in fact the headless corpse of a little girl. She lay on her stomach, nude except for a yellow V-neck sweater that was drenched in blood. The label had been torn from the sweater, and her hands were bound behind her back with black and red nylon rope. Within minutes, detectives swarmed the area, cordoning off the site and beginning their grim investigation. The girl was identified as a black child, estimated to be between the ages of 7 and 10 years old, standing between 4 feet 10 inches and 5 feet 4 inches tall when she was alive. Her fingers were adorned with 2 coats of red nail polish. Initial investigations quickly revealed that the child had not been murdered in the basement. The lack of blood surrounding the body suggested she had been killed elsewhere and disposed of in the abandoned building. Detective Sergeant Herb Riley, grappling with the grotesque reality before him, remarked to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Her head appeared to have been cleanly cut off. It was like somebody took a carving knife to her. Detectives also believed that the girl's body hadn't been in the basement for too long because she was well preserved. The news of the grisly discovery swept throughout the area like wildfire, and people were horrified of the gruesome nature of the murder. Stanley Stokowski, who worked at the medical examiner's office, remarked, "Just when you think you've seen about everything, you see something like this. I've been working murders for 20 years, and this has got to be the worst I've ever seen." In the wake of a horrific discovery, detectives wasted no time launching a thorough investigation to identify the little girl. The crime scene buzzed with activity as officers canvassed the neighborhood, conducting door-to-door inquiries in an urgent effort to uncover her identity. Strangely, there had been no reports of any children missing in the area, raising an alarming question. How could a child end up in such a tragic situation without anyone noticing her absence? Despite reviewing records of approximately 20 missing children in St. Louis, none matched the description of the headless girl. The child's body was promptly transported to the medical examiner's office, where autopsy revealed she had been dead for 2 to 3 days and had suffered sexual assault. The community, already reeling from the grisly discovery, began to refer to her as St. Louis Jane Doe. She was also affectionately nicknamed Hope, Precious Hope, and Little Jane Doe, reflecting a community's desire to honor her memory and seek justice. Yet the investigation faced an insurmountable hurdle. The girl's head was still missing. Detectives scoured a 16-block radius surrounding the abandoned building, meticulously checking sewers, trash cans, and any potential hiding places, but to no avail. Captain Leroy Atkins took to the airwaves, issuing an urgent appeal to Black parents, urging them to know where your children are. He urged those with daughters staying with relatives or friends to double-check their whereabouts. The unnerving silence surrounding the girl's identity prompted detectives to theorize that either the parents were unaware of their children's absence or, more disturbingly, that they might be involved. As the days trickled by, frustration mounted within the investigative team. One detective poignantly remarked on the difficulties they faced. When you don't know who the victim is and you don't have a murder scene, you're going to have a hell of a time with the investigation. I mean, where do you start? The community of St. Louis came together in a solemn gathering to honor the memory of the little girl whose life had been so tragically cut short. A memory service was held at New Mount Gideon West Baptist Church, where mourners shared their grief and sorrow for a child they had never known, but whose story had touched their hearts. In the aftermath of this memorial, detectives renewed their appeal for information, with Captain Leroy Atkins poignantly stating, "Somewhere out there is a mother without a little girl, a brother without a sister, a neighbor without a little girl running up and down the street." As the weeks turned into months, hope began to wane. Yet, in June, a glimmer of potential information emerged. Detectives announced they had received a letter from someone claiming to have details about the little girl. The anticipation was palpable, but when the detectives refused to disclose specifics, only stating that the letter identified the killer as a local man, the hope that the lead would lead to justice quickly faded. Despite their pleas for the sender to come forward, the individual remained silent, and the crucial lead fizzled out. By December, it was announced that St. Louis Jane Doe would finally be buried at Washington Park Cemetery. Lieutenant William Wilson addressed the media, acknowledging that there were still no new leads in the case. But they continued to check missing person reports from across the country. On December 3rd, the little girl was laid to rest in an unmarked grave, attended only by the detectives who had dedicated their time to the case and members of the media. 4 gravediggers served as pallbearers. Detective Herb Riley, who led the investigation, explained why it took so long for St. Louis Jane Doe to be buried. "Maybe I grew so attached to this kid I didn't want to go through with it. I kept thinking she would get a burial by the family." The only people who attended the burial were detectives who worked on the case and the media. Eventually, a gravestone was erected at the grave, paid for by donations that were collected by local school children. Despite a thorough investigation, the identity of St. Louis Jane Doe remained a mystery, as did the identity of her killer. Years passed, but the haunting case lingered in the minds of those who had worked on it. In 2001, Captain Atkins, now retired, expressed the ongoing frustration of not knowing what had happened to the little girl. "For the past 18 years, I still thought about that little girl and wondered why nobody ever cared enough to come forward and identify her," he said. "We have a lot of unsolved cases, but you don't have that feeling of inadequacy or failure that you do in this one. It's just frustrating." Over the years, many theories emerged, yet the prevailing notion was that St. Louis Jane Doe had been killed by her family. As Atkins pointed out, it must have been a very private family, isolated. In 2013, in an effort to uncover more about her past, the body of St. Louis Jane Doe was exhumed, and isotope tests were conducted on her remains. The results revealed she had spent her entire life in a cluster of southern states, including Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. After the exhumation, St. Louis Jane Doe was reburied at Calvary Cemetery in the Garden of Innocence, a poignant section of the cemetery dedicated to the unidentified or abandoned children. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these True Crime Stories, Volume 15. My heart goes out to all the family and friends who have lost their loved ones. If this is one of your cases, I offer you my deepest condolences. While your friend or loved one may be gone, they will forever have a voice until their killers are found and locked away. I would like to take this moment and thank the members and the new listeners of Back to Ashes and acknowledge you all. Thank you all so much for your continued support. It means the world to me because without you, I don't have a voice and this channel would not exist. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these cases. Please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. In the meantime, have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.